Hello guys and welcome back. So now we have the C++ project ready. We can go ahead and start setting up our snake game. Now you may have to wait for quite a while for Visual Studio to go through the indexing, especially when you're using extensions like Visual Assist, which again will cost you $99, but it's definitely worth it. Or if you don't like to use it, either just stick with Visual Studio, but you have to tap in a lot of things that I will have be in there, like auto completions kind of things are going to be more convenient for me, but I will try to make it as close as possible to your Visual Studio without Visual Assist experience. Or you can also do use Redder. To do that, you have to go to the edit project settings. Of course, you have to install Redder for Unreal Engine. I'm not going to go over that because that's fairly simple. You download it from the website and then you have to register for an account. It's in public preview, so it's free, right? That's something you can use. But you have to go to project settings, and I don't go there too much, but if you search for source, maybe it's in the editor settings. So editor preferences, source code. Yeah, if you have a Redder there, you can choose the Redder here, and then choose the correct one. Okay, and then you have to restart the editor here. Okay, nonetheless, you just create a C++ project empty with stutter content, and then we can start doing the game. Okay, now I have introduced C++ in the previous video and on how that is, still the go-to language if you want to get a job in the industry, right? But that doesn't mean that's an easy language. It is pretty difficult. So I wouldn't be able to explain every detail because you have to really learn that through like a C++ class, not a game engine programming class. That's like a common mistake. Other people think that they can just start jumping into the engine and start coding right away. That might be okay with C# on some level, but still there's a lot of things to explain. Just to get you understand, or be comfortable with the environment, right? But so I will explain the things that's critical, that's something that's related to our gameplay, but there will be a few things here and there that you probably will be wondering, why is this thing exist? Why is that? I'll try to explain them, but not able to go into every possible detail, just to be aware of that. Okay, so yeah, let's get started. I'm gonna go for File, New Level, and then Defaults. I don't save this. Okay. And then just press Ctrl S to save it. I want to call this guy game. Okay, to have our game level already ready. Now, just like our blueprint version, we're going to start with creating our basic Snakehead. Okay, now I'm going to go to the show or head source panels. So you can see we have C++ classes. Go in there, you can see we have a game mode there already. Right, and then I can go for add new C++ class. And the class will be of the type pawn. Okay, now this is the same concept as our blueprint version, which a pawn is an actor that can be possessed, right, and receive input from a controller, right? That's where you can really, hook up your input code. Actor can do the same thing, but you have to do more work to be able to do that. Okay, so we're going to choose pawn in this case. Okay, and next, name will be Snakehead, and then create class. Now, if this is the first time you are doing it, you probably will have to wait for a minute or so for it to compile the things, especially when Visual Studio is still doing something underneath, right? So let's wait for Unreal Engine to go over. You can see it went through all those things. Okay, I got some warning here in the output log. I don't know what that is. To get to this window, you can go to Window, Developer Tools, and Output Log. Okay, it should be popping up like that. You just drag it over to here to dock it. It's saying me it's not Visual Studio is not it's not responding there, but seems like Visual Studio is just asking me if I should reload the new file. So Sure, let's reload all, right? That's gonna reload the files. You can see now we have the snakehead.h file added in here. Now your Visual Studio may look very different compared to mine. First of all, I'm using a different font. This is the Seagull UI narrow. You can go change it to that. I think this is a much better looking font. So you go to Tools, Options, and then underneath the font somewhere, font and color. I'm using this Robo one. I thought I was using Seagull UI, but I'm not. Condensed light, right? Robo condensed light is the one I use. Okay. All right. And then I also have all those color codings. Yours could not, probably will not have these because I'm using Visual Assist enhanced syntax coloring. That's the color of the things I define for those various different type of things. If yours turns to be just white on some of the things, it's fine. It's just color coded differently, right? It's easier for me to understand. You can see now how this takes more setup and sometimes plugins to get things easier to work with, right? Okay, you can hold down Control and middle mouse button to zoom in and out of the text. Now let me explain some of the basics here. Okay, so on the top of every file, you'll have those hash include or hash something. Right, those are preprocessor directives. What they do is they do something for you before this code or the entire file is translated into machine code. Right, those are not something your computer can understand. Those are simple English, right? Those are English words. Right, computer does not understand English words, so this file is not going to be able to run by the computer right away. You have to really translate it into machine code, and those things are done before translation. Right? For example, include core minimal. What this does is basically copy everything from this file to here, to basically here, to get more stuff into the file before translating, because it needs those things in there, right? And those are the same things, just copying things over. Okay. All right, and then you have this class, uClass, right? This is basically how we define a thing, an object. This is the same as we do in Blueprint. We do right-click, new Blueprint class, and then choose whatever, right? This is how it should be written in Unreal C++, which you define. This is Unreal Engine class first. This is something we call a macro. It's a macro when it doesn't have a semicolon on the end. If you do have one, that means it's actually a statement, right? So a macro, what does a macro do? Well, it does something for you automatically, right? It's a collection of things that has to be done here. So whenever you see these, you don't worry too much about these things. If you right click and go to the definition or any of that right click, go to definition here, F12. Oh, let me do that here. You can see it's defined that as DLL export for this greedy snake API. This is a common thing, which means we're exporting a dynamic linked library, DLL, right, when we're building this. And go back. Okay. And these things, right, if we go to definition here, because this one is even more simple. It is literally nothing. Okay. Now, why something that is nothing does do something? This is actually done. This is quite unique in Unreal Engine. What it does is basically it's going through this. It's using something internally called the Unreal Header tool to process your file first, right? And then based on those things you've written down, even they're nothing, it can read this term or this token here to realize that you're creating a class for Unreal Engine, right? That's what it does. And you can pass in more parameters. But as far as C++ concerns, this equals to not having anything in there, right? So don't worry too much about those things. Okay, and then here you can see we're creating a class. Its name is a Snakehead. You're probably wondering, okay, wait a minute, did I say A here? You didn't, and I didn't do that either. So this A means it's an actor, right? That's kind of like a convention here. Okay, a convention. And you can see also it has a column and then public a pound. What does it mean is that this one is based on pound or derived from pound. When a class is derived from another class, this is also a class, right? It's the same thing as we do here, right? Blueprint class and then pound here. That's how it's written in code, right? It's based on pound, and then it's publicly based on pound, meaning that it inherits everything as its public attributes, which we'll talk about those differences maybe in some level, right? But it's basically based on pound, meaning that it does have everything pound have, right? It is a pound and it can be used as a pound because it can do anything a pound can do. Just like, you know, you can imagine a pound, maybe in real life, a pound is a human being and a snakehead is a programmer. Now a programmer is a human being, right? So it can do, or he or she can do everything a people can do, right? A human can do, but a programmer can do something more. So the programmer will be something that's extended from a regular human being, right? So that's the whole idea here. We create different type of things and we inherit or derive from these things to extend from them, right? Extend, first of all, you have everything this thing have. Snakehead has everything a pound have, and it's able to extend from there. Again, this is generated body. This is going to be Unreal's own thing. Don't worry about that. Okay. Now after that, instead of those curly brackets, that's going to be the body, the content of the class, right? What does the class have? In this case, it does have something we call a constructor, which we'll talk about what that is in maybe next class, next video, right? Public means it is publicly available, right? So other classes, other type of things can access it. Protect means only the ones in the family are able to touch it. So for example, if a pound have something that's protected, a snakehead can access it. But another thing, for example, I think there's in here, there's a game mode. And by the way, this is kind of like your outliner, right? Your solution explorer. That's every code you have. It consists of two big parts, the ue4 engine and your project, your game project, two things. The engine is available for you to review. You cannot change anything here, but you can still review all the code in there. Oh, this is the thing you have, right? So there's a game mode. So in our case, the snakehead here can, if there is a protected attribute or function, which we'll talk about what those things are, right? Anything that's part of the snakehead, if it is protected or underneath the protected category, other things like the greedy snakehead game mode base will not be able to access it. Okay, but if it is public, then yes, other things like the snake game mode base is able to access it, right? And there's even another one called private, which means no one can access it except the snakehead itself. Okay, so there's different, basically it's something we call visibility also, right? Is it available for others or not? Okay, so again, inside of those curly brackets, that's the body, right? The content of a snakehead. A snakehead is based on a pound, and there are different layers of visibility, right? Public ones and protected ones, and there will be a private ones, which will do some in the future, right? This is something we call constructor. That's basically where we define the default settings. You can also see this line is something we call a comment. Okay, now comment means this is something that's only readable by human being and only for human beings, for programmers. The code will just jump over and ignore this thing. Whenever you need to write a comment, you just type in 2 forward slashes and you can type in whatever after that, and those are going to be grinned out, meaning that they are not really relevant to your actual code. They're just for you to read, to review, or to write down some comments or notes for you or for other programmers. Okay. All right, now first of course, this one, right, again, is a constructor. That's where we set the default values for this pound's properties, right, or attributes. And you have another one called begin play, which is called when the game starts. And this is another one called tick, which is called every frame. And there's another one being called to bind functionalities, actually. Right, so those three things, 1, 2, 3, those are something we call general member functions of the class. Right, function is basically a thing that you can call by writing it down in any statement to do whatever this thing does, like a functionality. For example, just to explain it, like in a real world, when you have like a car, right? The car will have multiple functionalities, like running forward, stop, turn around, right? Open window, open door, right? And a bunch of different things, play music, right? Those can be just various functions. Okay, now there are some pre-built functions for us in here. Okay, now you're probably wondering, if you're a C# programmer, you're probably wondering, where is the body? There's no body for those things. Okay, so for every class, right, in Unreal Engine or in C++ in general, you like to have 2 files. So that's not necessary, right? But you almost always have those 2 files instead of 1. One of those files is this file we're viewing now called snakehead.h. Another file here, snakehead.cpp, is going to be the actual implementation of those functions. You can see here now you have begin play, tick, and set up player input component. That's the same as those 3. Okay. Now, for those 3, in the CPP file, you can see they are also having this namespace. This is something we call namespace. When you see 2 columns, right? 2 columns. A snakehead, that's the namespace. Now, why does it have to be in there? Because those functions are outside of those curly bracket. Right, so whatever that's in the curly bracket, you don't have to specify it. It's part of a snakehead. But if you wanted to specify it as part of the snakehead outside of the curly bracket, you have to write down this namespace to indicate that, okay, that's a member function, right, for a snakehead. And be aware of that. You can see now it requires explanation for me to go over to show you what is going on here. You can also see, interestingly, in the CPP file, we're including snakehead.h. So this entire thing will be copied over. So everything here will be just Control-C, Control-V into this file before this file is translated into machine code. Okay. All right. Now again, in this CPP file, you can see we have curly brackets. Right. Instead of the curly bracket, that's the body of the function. Right. What does the function do? Well, what's written in here? Right. So every function does have something in there already, but all you have to know is, again, the whole structure, right? You have a class that's called a snakehead. It's based on a pound. Instead of the curly bracket, you have all its attributes and functionalities. In this case, we only have functionalities, like the constructor, which defines the basic values for various attributes or properties, and you have other 3 functions that will be run when game plays, or will be run every frame, or this one will be run when you are when this class is being created, and the input is this one will be called, and any inputs you want to be bound with this pound will be set up in here. Right, and then the actual detail of those things is in here in the CPP file. Each one of them will now have a pair of curly brackets. Inside of the curly brackets, that's the actual thing those various functions will be doing. Okay, now just to compare that with your typical blueprint. So if I do that here, blueprint class, pound, just to show you. Okay, it's in the event graph. You can see now there's a graph here called event graph. You have begin play, begin overlap, tick. Right, now you have begin play here, begin overlap, and tick. Now you can think of this list, right, or this entire thing here as your header file, and the actual detail is the graph. Okay, if that makes sense, you can see begin play, tick. That's the equivalent of begin play and tick, right? So even there are different formats, you can see they're basically the same thing in different formats, right? So yeah, that's 20 minutes of me explaining what is in there, right? You can already see, but I want to go over, enough details so you feel comfortable, right? You feel like you don't have doubts on what you're doing, right? Again, this is not an introduction to C++ class, so it's probably going to be still difficult for you to get your head around. But let's start coding in the next video so you know, so you can see how this works, right? Yeah, so let's do that in the next video.